Hey, we're so glad that you're here with us today for our first grade webinar of the 2021 school year. Today we're going to be talking about tips, tricks, and read alouds to start your year for digital or face-to-face learning. So some of the things that you're going to see in the webinar this year, you may have seen with me last year in the webinar, but we've gone through and talked about what is this going to look like if you're not face-to-face, if you're teaching from a virtual setting. So think of that lens kind of as we're planning and going through today. Welcome. We're so glad that you're here. I am Jennifer Zumberis, and I am joined with Joanne Wood.
Hi, everybody.
And we're going to be going through the webinar together today. I am your social studies and special education content integration specialist, and I'm also the kindergarten and first grade virtual specialist. So we're going to talk about all of that as we get going today. Our agenda, we have lots of things going on. We're going to talk about must-haves, read alouds, analyzing sources, gradual release, exploring our resources that are available, and then we'll end kind of with getting connected and closing questions and answers. All right, what does it look like? This is such a different year. As we're sharing today, if you have ideas, suggestions, tips, or tricks, if you would please add those to our discussion forum on EdWeb, that would be wonderful, so we can kind of all go through this together. But don't just share those, also share your questions. If there are questions that we can share for the good of the group that might help out, the discussion forum is a great place to do that. So definitely add those as you watch this webinar, or as you begin your school year. As you have questions, tips, suggestions, go ahead and put those in our discussion forum. All right, let's start with our must-haves, maps. If you've been on with me before, we've talked a lot about maps and how important it is for our students to see maps. We want to make sure that we have maps for everyone to see, that they have maps glued in either their journals or their interactive notebooks, and then also that we're referencing the map as we study people and places. One of the great things to do as we're going through our historic figures in first grade is to talk about, okay, find Georgia on your map, and then this is where this person is from, or this is where this person lived, or this is where Ruby Bridges went to school. It really helps them kind of grasp where they are in reference to those places. So great resource to have. But what does that look like virtually? You can share links for maps with your students. You can send maps home for your students to have there, or you also can use interactive maps as Google Slides. So what in the world does that look like? Angie Battle made this during a GCEE workshop, and the Georgia map goes over 2 pages, and she used it on a Google slide. And what the participants did within the session is they just copied the star and then they pasted it onto the map where they lived. So obviously our students are all going to be in the same place in Georgia, so this would not be an appropriate map. But I do think them copying and pasting onto the map might be a good virtual choice for them. They definitely could find Georgia on a United States map, or they could find their city on the Georgia map. Another thing to do with this is you could have, as you're learning about the historic figures, you know, you could move the stars to those places, or you could even use, instead of a star, you could use a clip art image or a primary source image of that person's face and have them move to the state that they lived in, or a state that's significant to them that you're learning about. So another great way to tie in all of that for students. Timelines are also so important for our first graders. If you've heard me talk about timelines before, my students kept thinking that I maybe knew Thomas Jefferson or Lewis and Clark, and they would ask me, oh, did you know them back in the day? No, I didn't. So one of the things that really helped my students kind of understand time as much as their first grade minds could was having a timeline in our classroom. In the beginning, I posted about, you know, our country, and then the very last point of the timeline was always the present, a picture of our whole class, and it really helped the students have a reference point, kind of understand where those historic figures kind of fell into time, and also how they were in time, sometimes together, but sometimes not. And it was a good way for them to understand that. You can post it in your classroom. You can use it in your journals or interactive notebooks. I've seen teachers have it posted as a grade level in the hall. And then you also can create timelines to reflect your unit and add to the timeline as you study new events or new things related to your historic figure. But what does that look like if you're virtual? You can create timelines virtually for your students to be able to use or see. You can have students create timelines to show what they know. You can make interactive timelines for your students to manipulate as a Google slide. If your students are unplugged in their home and can't access information virtually, you could send them the information on pictures and have them cut them out and then move them or manipulate them to show the timeline or the events as well. Another great way to use timelines is to introduce each other. Have students create a timeline of important events in their life. Give them some kind of number 5. I want you to include 5 things on your timeline that are important to you. And it could be, when they were born, when they started school, when they lost their first tooth, or when they had their first baseball game, when a sibling was born, whatever is important to them to include in their timeline. Another must are journals, notebooks, interactive notebooks, whatever you want to call them. But students need a way to record their thinking. No matter what it looks like, they need a plan. I always used composition notebooks with a piece of colored duct tape on the top. We had a different color for each content area, and that helped my students kind of know which journal to go with. But it doesn't have to be a composition notebook. It can be a folder with brads, a spiral notebook, a sketchbook, even just copy paper, folded in half and stapled together, whatever it is that you want students to record with. I kept my journal throughout the whole school year. Lots of people just use a journal for each unit or for each content that they're studying. That's fine too, whichever way you prefer. There's not really a right or a wrong. But what does this look like if you're virtual? That's something you're going to want to put a lot of thought into. Joanne and I were working on writing some virtual lessons this summer, and one of the things that we really struggled with is we would say, oh, well, students will do this. Oh, what is this going to look like if we're not face-to-face? Or what is this going to look like if we're virtual? How does this work? Or what happens if the students don't have any access to technology? So those are things that you're going to want to kind of think through. Can students respond on a Google slide, a Word document, Padlet, take pictures on a cell phone and send them to you? How are you going to ask your students to record, especially if you're not starting in a face-to-face setting? It may be that you have them a packet that they pick up that has some type of interactive notebook or journal in there. Procedures, procedures, procedures. I am so big on this, and if you have done any kind of webinar with me before, you know that. I think modeling is the key, especially with our young students. We want to do anything that we're teaching whole group and then move towards small group and independent. But what does that look like virtually? Like I told you, Joanne and I really grappled with this, and we went back and forth every time we would have this idea that we thought was beautiful. It was like you would hear the brakes just screech, like, oh my gosh, what is this going to look like if we're not face to face? Or we're so used to having our students on the carpet and being able to have a discussion. What does it look like if we can't? So modeling is very much that way. One of the things we want to think about is, my students have never seen me, they've never done this with me. How can I do this in a way that my students will understand? You can send examples or samples, or post pictures of examples or samples. You can have students add to a document. If they are adding to a document, you want to make sure you already have exemplars in place. For example, if you're having them include their favorite holiday, then you may want to start by including yours. You can create or share videos through YouTube, Facebook, Facebook Live, Class Dojo. There are a variety of ways that you can share videos of you modeling with students. Also using step-by-step pictures of something happening, or process charts. You can do a PowerPoint with you doing a voiceover or talking over the PowerPoint. Think especially, though, about your students who are not connected at all virtually. What is it going to look like for them? It may be you printing a picture of steps, or it may be you printing a process chart for them to take home in a packet, or it could be you going through and starting whatever graphic organizer you're using. It may be you putting in their kit a partially completed example for them to kind of know what's expected. Great read alouds. We love read alouds, and we would definitely want you doing those, whether you're face-to-face or virtual. But where do you find great read alouds? We've talked about this before. GCSS.net. Then you're going to click on information, and then you'll have a drop down. You'll click on children's literature, and when you get there, you'll see a page that looks like this. So you'll click whichever grade levels you want, And then one thing that's incredibly awesome about the GCSS site is these are all unique to Georgia and Georgia standards. So definitely well worth your time to check that out. Also, NCSS has a notable trade books publication that they put out every year. When you click on the link, it has text at the top, so you might think you're in the wrong place. If you keep on scrolling, it has all of these hyperlinks that take you to a PDF of the publication. When you click on, at the top is actually now 2020 and not 2019. When you click on the 2020 publication, it will tell you that you have to have an NCSS membership. If you don't have a membership, consider joining, but if you can't, then just skip the 2020 for now and click on 2019. The previous ones, previous years do not have to have a password or membership. Once you open it up, the PDF looks kind of like this. The beginning of the PDF has all of these. I hope that they look familiar to you. They are the thematic strands for the NCSS curriculum standards for social studies. Many of them are very, very similar to our connecting themes and enduring understanding. So a great place for you to get resources there. When you look at the PDF or within the document, it has the titles, the authors, and then you also see the little keys from here of which standard or strand is addressed in each book. So a great resource for you to go back and use. But how do we do read alouds if we are virtual? That is so tricky. Joanne talked a lot this summer about how important it is for our students to hear our voices, especially when you're creating culture for your classroom or setting up that family feel and you haven't laid eyes on these kids yet. It is so important that they get to know you and feel safe with you. And a great way to do that is through read alouds. These first three bullets that you see here, they are talking about copyright laws and how to conduct live read alouds, ways to share them, ways to find them, how to include them in a way that's respectful to authors and publishers. And then the next two bullets that you see are compiled lists of authors reading their own books or different, sometimes it's celebrities reading books or teachers reading books that you could share the link with your students. Again, we would prefer it be you reading, but that can always happen. So if it can't, definitely check those out. Also in our PLC library, we have the directions for how you can record your own read aloud and post it for students to watch. Getting more from your read aloud. I used to get so frustrated when we were talking about social studies and not having enough time in our schedule. The go-to answer was always, well, integrate it with ELA and read a book. But it's not just reading a book or choosing a read aloud. We have to be super intentional with how we use our read aloud and really use it in a smart way. So we can use books to introduce, to add, to confirm, to summarize, to enjoy, and of course to prompt discussion. So those are all ways that we can be intentional with our read alouds. And then another way that we can do that is also through using the illustrations from our read alouds. We can use the illustration in the same way that we would use a primary source, or in the same way that we would analyze an image. We can analyze the illustrations from the books that we're reading. So we would have students look at the illustrations and talk about, what do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder? So if this were me and I were setting up my classroom, I know the beginning of the year I'm going to be hitting a lot of rules and procedures. And one of the things I really, really, really always emphasized was creating that classroom culture. And one of the ways that we do that is through teaching kindness. So showing pictures from a book and having the students talk about, what do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder? Is a great way to get started with that. Another great thing to do is, like we said, pull those connecting themes and enduring understandings. In our EdWeb library, there's also a document that has the kid-friendly version of the connecting themes and enduring understandings. It has kind of the official ones on the left, and then it put into more of kid-friendly language on the right. So another great way to use read alouds is to use those to reinforce those connecting themes and enduring understandings that they're going to be learning about throughout the year. What If Everybody Did That is a great book. I've shared it many times with you. The reason I love it is it has this beautiful if-then format on the left side of the page. something's happening and it's usually only one person. And then the kind of theme that goes throughout the book is, what if everybody did that? And then on the right side is what would happen if everyone made that same choice. So it's just a good visual for students to be able to see. The themes and enduring understandings that I would connect with this one would be the individuals, groups, and institutions, about how our actions have both intended and unintended consequences, and interdependency, that our decisions sometimes have intended and unintended consequences on other parties. That's a perfect way to introduce your rules and really start your social studies strong. We, of course, want you to be using Swirl with your read alouds. We know that this is the best way to make our teaching stick when we can use all 5 of these elements. We know that we have a greater possibility of our students retaining information and also really being able to think critically. We want them speaking, writing, illustrating, reading, and listening. So what does that look like with a read aloud, and how can we swirl using our read aloud? So I pulled what if everybody did that and kind of walked through what that might look like with each of those 5 components. And then virtually, if you're in a virtual setting, what would that look like? Of course, speaking, you could have students talk as a class discussion, a table talk, partner discussions on what's happening on each page, and go through those big questions. You know, what happens when people make bad choices? Why is their choice important? How does their choice impact others? But if you're virtual, you know, what might that look like? You could have a live session for students to be able to share their thinking. You could have students record their thoughts through a video. You can have students record a voice memo on a cell phone or a tablet. But we also want to make sure we're remembering those students who aren't connected. We know that for students to really think critically, one of the important things is for them to be able to speak and really talk out their thinking. So you may want to have students talk to someone they live with, or have students be able to call or FaceTime a classmate or a family member and talk to them about those same questions from the book. Writing, we can give students a copy of the page from the book to label or circle what they notice. They might write about what's happening in their social studies journals or interactive notebooks when it's developmentally appropriate. You know, the beginning of first grade is kind of iffy on exactly how much writing they can do and how readable it will be, but that might be a time where they're just kind of illustrating and using words and labeling. We can also make a class or an individual book where students create their own what if everybody did that scenarios like they show in the book. But if we're virtual, how are we going to have students respond in writing? They might use a shared class document like a Google slide or a Padlet. We might have students use digital copies of the pages and add call outs or speech bubbles to show what the people in the book are thinking. But thinking about our students who are not connected, we may send pictures of the book home for them in their kit that shows what's happening in the book, so they can kind of do those same things with a copy of the text. Illustrating, we might have students divide their journal page and draw pictures of the bad choice on one side and then what happened as a consequence on the other side. We could have students illustrate their own scenarios, and then we also could do, instead of that if-then format being bad, what if the if-then format's good? What if everyone made the right choice? What would that look like? If they're virtual, we want to make sure that we're sending home copies of the pages so they can do those same things. And then where are they going to do it? Are they going to do it in their interactive notebook? Are they going to do it on a piece of paper and take a picture? Are they actually going to write on that digital copy? You want to think through those things as well. Reading, we want to have a shared reading experience with our students. Hopefully, I'm going to find a way that I can either read this book live or send the students a recording of me reading the book. But students also need a chance to be able to read those illustrations as well. So you could even have a recording of yourself just turning the pages so students can be able to study those images. And then we also want to read books that are similar, where students are making choices and kind of compare and contrast the choices that the characters made. If you're virtual, you can read that video live or share it in a recorded session. And then also remember those students who aren't connected. They may not be able to watch the video on a cell phone. If they can't, what are you going to do? It may be that you send them a couple of copies of the paired pages home for them to be able to look at, or you may give some kind of picture images that would kind of compare to the book, if you could do that. Listening, we want to listen to the book, but also listen to the discussion of our classmates. If we're virtual, we can have a live session for students to share their thinking. Students might record through a video or voice memo and have their peers listen, or they could talk to someone at home or through a call or FaceTime with a classmate or a family member. Analyzing sources, that is going to be such an important skill that we're going to teach our students to reinforce all year long. But what does a source look like? It could be a photograph, it could be an object, it could be an illustration from a children's book, or it might be a primary source document. But to do that and to do it well, we've got to make sure that we are model. We've got to model everything we're doing with that gradual release format, the we do, you do, I do. What do you see or notice in the image or with the object? What do you know? What do you think? What do you think you know? What do you wonder? And then how does this change as the year progresses? Of course, in the beginning of the year, it's going to be very ish, and it's going to be a lot more of you doing the talking or the thinking and the kids kind of joining in. But as you keep going and have modeled that throughout lessons, your kids are going to be more and more independent and be better and better thinkers. You can model this through videos, whether they're live or recorded. You can use picture examples or exemplars, and you also can do voiceovers. We want to make sure that we're always giving the students think time, but we want to make sure that we're being very intentional about doing that. We want to start good habits from the very beginning before we do any kind of sharing or writing. We want to make sure we're starting with the think time, and we want to make sure that everyone in the group gets a voice. If you are doing this in a live or recorded session, follow that same format that you would do if you were face-to-face. If you're asking the students a question or you're asking them to do something, remind them to have that think time. Someone that I was listening to this summer compared it to Blue's Clues or like Dora the Explorer, if you ever watched any of those. You know, they ask the question and then they pause, waiting on the audience to answer. So think through those same things, you know, kind of get your Oscar award-winning presentation ready and just ham it up and wait for them to be able to respond. We want to make sure we're looking at resources in a variety of ways. I think, I wonder is always a great way to start. But after a while, you want to kind of branch out and be trying some other things. Sensory analysis is a great strategy. That's where students look through the image using their 5 senses. A quadrant analysis is where you might want to cut the image into pieces or have students look at just one section of the image at a time. You can have students use viewers like magnifying glasses or play I Spy and have them spy or look for things in the image. Look for someone who's being brave. Look for someone who's scared. Look for something that you know, something that you wonder about. But give them a task so they know what to be looking for in their image. You also can do a chalk talk where you write around the outside of your image, things that you see, things that you think or wonder. A lot of times I would let my students change colors. So they would write what they see in one color, what they think in another color, what they wonder in a third color. So it just gives kind of a way for them to think through and understand that all 3 of those things are different steps. Gallery walks are also a great way for students to study images. You can line images up in the hall and have students walk through and look. You can post images around your classroom. You even can provide each group with a set of images to look at. But the point of the gallery walk is that they're looking at lots of images, but also that they're looking at them quietly. Think about what you would do in an art gallery. Most of these activities could be shared through a virtual platform for students to respond with. For students that are not connected, this is a great time to give some meaningful kits or meaningful packets sent home to students. Remember, if this is a new skill and it's something they haven't done, you want to include an example so they know exactly what you're doing. These are some sample formats that you could use if you're sending home inquiry work in a kit or a packet for students to complete. This, what do you see, what do you think, what do you wonder, would be a great one for the beginning of 1st grade that would be appropriate. This next one has who's in the picture, what's happening, where was it, when was it. That one's going to be a little bit harder if you haven't already done that face-to-face or live. That's one that probably more towards the middle of the year. This is a great one to send home in a packet for students to just have for any image that they looked at or analyzed. And then the one you see here on the far right goes with that sensory analysis. What do you see? What would you touch? What would you smell? But students go through and can look at the image that way. When you send them home, all you have to do is print the image or print the graphic organizer with an image inside. So you send the image home in the student's packet or kit, and it gives them a great authentic inquiry activity for them to work on. All of these organizers can be used virtually or printed again for the students who aren't connected. But the thing that I love about all of these is they have that visual prompt so that the wording is consistent and they can do their work independently. This was also very helpful for me as a parent when things came home. A lot of times my son couldn't explain to me exactly what he was supposed to be doing. So these prompts kind of helped me as a parent as well, kind of know how to help him and push him through things. We want to make sure that we are using gradual release, that we are starting with that model that we talked about where we're doing we do, you do, I do. So this is an example of how to do that using pictures. These pictures are also in our beginning of the year folder on in our EdWeb PLC library. As they look at that first image, we're going to start doing this image as a whole class. What do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder? What rules are they following? What would happen if they didn't follow those rules? And then students are going to respond. If you're doing this virtually, you could do this live or through a recorded session, allowing students to participate if that's possible. If students aren't connected, you may want to print the image with your thoughts recorded on it for them to see. Or if you're in a situation where you could call or FaceTime with them just to talk them through how to look at the image together, that also would be a good tool. From there, you're going to move to the you do portion, have the students study the image together, give them a new image. What do you see? What do you think? What rules are they following? You're doing that same exact procedure, but you're just doing it with a new image. And then from there, if you are virtual, lots of platforms that we're using have breakout rooms, so students could go into rooms and talk about images with each other. You could do that if possible. You also could assign students to each group and have them call each other, or even have students work with someone at home. And then if your students are not connected, you want to make sure they have images to look at and that they could talk to someone at home or arrange to call a classmate or a family member if that's appropriate. That last step is the I do. After you've gone through a couple of images and you feel like your students are independent and they're ready to move forward on their own, have them choose one of the images that you've shown and write about those images in their journal or their interactive notebook, what rules are being followed, and just listen in as students share when you can. If you're virtual, though, of course, that's going to look a little bit different. You're going to have students share their rules or illustrations using some kind of class document. Might be a Google slide, Padlet. If you're doing Class Dojo, they could even send pictures. But also consider those students who are not connected. They might want to take a picture of their work and send it to you so you can share it with their classmates, or you might have them share their work with someone at home. Okay, my favorite part, beginning of the year favorite read alouds. A lot of these are read alouds that I've shared with you before, but there are some new ones that I also wanted to showcase. These three up here at the top are the what if everybody did that, what if everybody said that, and this one on the right is a new one to me, what if everybody thought that? And I think it's so appropriate with what's going on right now. The book kind of talks about judging others by the way that they look. And what happens is it follows that same if-then format. So on the left side of the page, they might say, oh, he's too little. He'll never make a basket. And on the then side, the little boy does make a basket. But what if everybody thought that he couldn't? And then you can see the same thing. There's a student here in a wheelchair, and it talks about what if everybody thought that she couldn't do it? And just goes through and gives kids a beautiful, different perspective to not judge people on the way that they look or on what they think they can or can't do. Invisible Boy, Spaghetti in a Hot Dog Bun, If You Plant a Seed, Be Kind, and I Walk with Vanessa are all beautiful books about kindness, how students showed a kindness to one another, or were shown kindness by someone else. It's a great way to create that culture of kindness in your classroom through those read alouds, and also looking at how you can impact others in a positive way. It ties in with that taking informed action beautifully. After the fall, down here on the bottom shelf, this was new to me. This is the story of Humpty Dumpty. After he falls off the wall and is put back together, he is traumatized and has just an extreme fear of heights and taking risks. So this book kind of talks about Humpty Dumpty's journey of getting over fears and worries and what that might look like. So super fun read aloud that's different and unique. Over here, the top shelf, these three are also great books. Buddy Bench is talking about kindness and what to do when someone is not included. And it talks about, hey, if you're lonely and you don't have anybody to play with, go sit on the buddy bench and we'll know that you need a friend. So that's a great thing to implement even in your classroom. Peanut Butter and a Cupcake. Peanut Butter is looking for a friend and he is struggling to find his just right person. So it's a great kind of play on words that I think your kids will enjoy. Chocolate Milk, Por Favor is new to me. I loved it. It's about a little boy who moves into a classroom and he does not speak English. And they kind of are giving him a hard time and they don't want anything to do with him. And slowly but surely the students start realizing what he's saying and that he's looking for chocolate milk, and then they start kind of copying some of his language and they teach him and he also teaches them. So it's just a beautiful lesson. I thought it would also be very appropriate for our English language learners and kind of give them a connection or a voice mirror in our classrooms. Mean Gene, Recess Queen, Enemy Pie, and Chrysanthemum are old favorites, of course, talking about friendships. Some lessons are good, some lessons are bad, but it's a great book for students talking about that culture of kindness. And Tattle Tongue is great for tattletaling. You know, kindergarten and first grade, that is such a big struggle, but it really kind of defines what a tattle is and what's the difference and when you need to handle it yourself and when you need to get an adult involved. It's a great choice there. And then the bottom shelf, Officer Buckle and Gloria and David Goes to School, of course, are great rules. A book about rules and then the consequences of what happens when we don't follow them, or the consequences of our actions on others. So both of those are great books. You'll notice as I hover over these, a YouTube link will pull up. All of these books have a YouTube link attached to them. So if you want to open this PowerPoint later, you can click on the book and it will give you a video copy of the book. We, of course, want you to read the book to your students, but I use those when I'm trying to decide if it's a book that I want to add to my library. I'll watch the YouTube video and see if I like the book before I buy it. It's kind of like my preview. So those are there for you as well. And then these two down here on the bottom were two that were new to me that I wanted to spotlight, that are beautiful books about diversity and being different and being comfortable with you and who you are. The Day That You Begin is Jacqueline Woodson. Beautiful story about a little girl kind of feeling comfortable in her own skin and being different with everyone, being different, but it being okay and being beautiful. And then All Are Welcome is the same way. They're talking about all are welcome here, and it has that repeated text through the book. All are welcome, all are welcome. So such a great community book about teaching community in our classroom and setting that culture of including everyone, showing kindness, and recognizing and appreciating diversity. Okay, exploring our resources. We've got some things that are probably old hat to you that you already know about, but hopefully some new resources for you to use as well. GeorgiaStandards.org, if you're not familiar with that, please take time to visit and check it out. Once you go there, there are curriculum maps, teacher notes, teacher content videos, sample units, source sets, all of those things are there. But the great thing about them is they're ready to use immediately. The source sets are PowerPoints. They're ready for you to save to your computer or pull up and open and use immediately. Same thing with the sample units. Lots and lots of great lesson ideas with the resources right there available for you to use as well. So definitely take time and check those out. If you're not a member of EdWeb yet, please join. Super easy, free. You just click up here at the top where it says Join EdWeb. You enter your email address, and then once you get in there, you can browse the communities. I'm a member of all the communities. When I was in the classroom, I was a member of the communities that were around my grade level, because we can learn so much from our friends and our colleagues. The great thing about EdWeb is it has free resources. That's where our monthly webinars are housed. There's a discussion forum always going with questions and events that are coming up. And it's also specific to GSE. It's all Georgia teachers, specific to our grade or course. Once you get into the first grade resource library, you will see, or first grades, you'll see the community toolbox. And then you go down to resource library, and when you open it up, it looks like what you see here on the screen. Everything is divided up, I hope, by catalogs or units. This is beginning of the year that you see down here at the bottom. When you click on that, it shows all of the resources that I've given you today, the images that we used, the pictures from read alouds, all of those things are there for you in the beginning of the year folder. If it has a disk like this, that means it's ready for you to save to your computer. If it has the globe, that means it's a website for you to reference. Okay, stay tuned to be on the lookout. There are some amazing resources coming your way. There's going to be digital resource lesson plans, or a digital resource lesson plan for every single grade level and course. That's going to be on the georgiastandards.org page for each grade level, so be looking for that to come out. It's an amazing resource. It's a lesson plan, but it's not considered just over one day. It's a plan that you would use over a number of days. So that's going to be there for you as well. The great thing about it is every resource that we include in the lesson plan, you also have the resource there for you. It's ready. Everything is there. It's like a one-stop shop. So it's going to be an incredible resource for you. Also, the GaDOE team, we are doing our PL a little bit differently right now. We're going to have some new statewide training that anybody can sign up for. Usually, someone from our team would come out if a district or a RESA requested us to come out and do a training, we would. These trainings are open to anyone. You just go to the website and sign up. Hopefully, they will be rolling out sometime next week. Also, we have made lots of updates and additions to our units, especially the beginning of the year units. Those are going to be posted on georgiastandards.org, so make sure you're looking for those within our first grade grade band. And then we have exciting news that is going to be, I can't even think of an adjective that's exciting enough to tell you. It's going to be thrilling. So that's going to be coming out from GCSS. Be looking for that big news as well. And we're going to talk in the end about how to get connected. That's how you'll know when that big news releases. All right, announcements. Here's what's happening. Teacher takeover. If you have never done the teacher takeover, super easy. You take over the Instagram account. The Department of Education loans you our social studies Instagram information, and you get on there and just post all the great things that you are doing in your classroom or that you're doing virtually. All you need to do to sign up is click on this Google form, which is here in the PowerPoint. It's on our handout, and it is also in our resource library, so you can click on that to apply. If you're not ready to apply or you don't know exactly what it looks like, take some time and just search on Instagram GaDOE Teacher Takeover and look at some of the things that other teachers have posted. Super easy and definitely a great resource for you. Okay, check it out. We have a new resource in our EdWeb resource library. After each webinar, I'm going to upload a handout for you that covers everything that we've talked about in our monthly webinar. The websites that we've used, the books that I've shared, the agenda, all of that's going to be on one page for you to go back and reference whenever you need to look at it. So be on the lookout for that. And then lastly, we want you to be connected. All those things that I was telling you about to be on the lookout for, the very first place they will post them will be Twitter and Facebook. That's how you'll know that they're out. Joy does a great job posting everything and keeping our social media super active. So follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Instagram, like we said, is the Teacher Takeover account. There's so many resources for you and great ideas there, so don't forget to look at that. EdWeb, of course, we want you to join our first grade PLC. And like I said, I always joined the grade level that I was in as well as the grade levels around it, because we always share great information and can change it and use it to fit our students' needs. My email is there for you. If there's anything I can do for you, questions, comments, concerns, resources, please send me an email. And then I also want you to go to our GaDOE.org page. The link is here for you at the bottom, and it's in the handout that I just talked to you about as well. We have lots of new virtual resources in our virtual hub. There are lots of virtual field trips. I don't think too many of us are going to be going on face-to-face field trips this year, but there are many, many, many virtual field trips there. Of course, they're all free. Same thing with that next one, virtual workshops. There are lots of virtual workshops that are free for you that are posted as well. They are not specific to Georgia. They're there for you to look at. Our Ideas Ready to Use webinar series, if you missed out on that this spring, there's some great resources there that you might want to look at, especially if you're going to be teaching virtually as school starts back. And then, of course, our monthly webinars are housed there on the GaDOE page as well as our edweb.net page. So I think that's it for today. We had a whole lot of information to give out really quickly, but I thank you for taking time to watch us today. Joanne, do you have anything you need to add?
No, but great job. I think we're off to a great start.
I think so as well. So we will look forward to seeing you in August. And remember to join or get connected with Twitter and Facebook so you can get those updates about our August topic, and also through EdWeb.
Great, thanks.
See you soon.